Hi everyone, this is Taylor with the Daily Geddon. I want to say welcome and thank you for watching. Today we're going to talk about what happened in the Senate and the House last week, which was the week of March 9th. And just jumping right into it, we're going to start with a segment that I like to call Things That Make You Say, So the first bill that I want to talk about is H.R. 2877, and this bill was passed by the House on March 9th, last Monday, and this bill would give Irish people access to an E3 visa. And an E3 visa was significant because it was originally only open to Australian skilled labor, and it was a byproduct of the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement. Now, an E3 visa is easier and quicker to obtain than work visas that either Mexicans or Canadians would have to apply for. Now, originally, America could only issue 10,500 of these visas out to Australian skilled labor, and that's great. Taylor, why is this a problem? We're giving more people access to America, and we're bringing more skilled labor into our country. Well, the problem comes when the bill states that the amount of visas that can be issued to Irish skilled labor is 10,500 minus the amount of visas that were issued to Australian skilled laborers in the last fiscal year. So that means that if 10,500 of these visas were issued to Australians, then zero can be issued to Irish people. For whatever reason, this bill inherently thinks that Australian labor is better than Irish labor. And that is where you just have to say, Next, I want to say happy birthday to Maine. Yes, the state, not a person named Maine. It's its 200th year of joining the Union, which is a great accomplishment. And that brings me to our next point, which is Senate Resolution 541, which was brought into the Senate on March 11th of last week. And it was passed by the Senate on March 11th. And this resolution is to recognize and celebrate the 200th anniversary of Maine joining the Union. And that's all well and good until you have to realize the amount of work that had to go into preparing this bill and then introducing it in front of the Senate and taking up their time. Someone had to pick this bill and put it in front of something else that could have been brought to the Senate for a vote. There were some good things out of last week where Congress actually passed this bill that we're looking at, H.R. 1425, that actually alleviates or tries to alleviate some out-of-pocket expenses for people who hold individual healthcare plans. So if your healthcare plan is called a grandfathered plan or has a grandfathered status, this doesn't apply to you. But if it does, and if you have gotten a healthcare plan, an individual healthcare plan, after March 23rd of 2010, which is when the Affordable Care Act went into place, then you might want to look into whether or not you can get some of these benefits. The House also passed some laws that will help Korean families that have been split up and divided by the Korean War, and these families, they still might have relatives inside of North Korea that they don't get to see all that often, if ever. And this law mandates that the US government go out and meet with those individuals and meet with those families and help them come up with a way, even if it's by video conference or a video call, that they get to see their family members still inside of North Korea. The vets also got some attention with the House this week, and the House actually passed this Senate Resolution S760 that gives more educational assistance to veterans. The House also passed a bill that would dissolve educational debt for veterans that are considered permanently disabled or unemployable. Another bill that was passed in the House was H.R. 6172, and H.R. 6172 is the FISA bill that you might have heard about if you follow certain Twitter accounts. And I know this one's important, it's a big one, and there's a lot of detail, so I want to make sure that I get into everything, and I'm not going to include all of that detail in this episode. We might get into it in next week's episode, so stay tuned for that one. The next bill that I want to talk about is S2657, and this bill, it was actually introduced into the Senate and talked about and considered this last week on March 10th, and it wasn't actually voted on because this coronavirus bill actually took precedence and took all the priority away from it. But what this bill is it's a push towards a new renewable energy resource and something that's a little bit more efficient than oil and gas, and something that we pretty much have an infinite supply for, and there's already some technology in place that can allow us to access this energy source. And I think this is a really big deal. I know that I'll be tweeting about it. I encourage you guys to tweet about it. I'll include the sponsor's Twitter in the description, so look for that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the coronavirus. It's really hard to avoid in the news these days. It's everywhere. It's everything, and I must encourage everyone that's watching to stay as safe as possible. Listen to the right information. I know there's people out there spreading some false information, but make sure you're getting your information from doctors and actual credited sources, because there's a lot of people spreading misinformation. And what I'm going to talk about is not necessarily the virus or how to prevent it, but Congress's response to the virus and what they're doing to try to keep us safe and keep our health of the utmost priority. And what you can see here is that Congress has actually introduced a bunch of bills. This is a simple search on the congress.gov website, and these are all the bills that have coronavirus in the title, not even COVID-19 or some other public health emergency, something like that. And there's only been 2 bills that have really moved, and 2 of them that have became law actually as relating to the coronavirus. And one of them is HR 6074, and that was actually became law on March 6th. It was an appropriations bill that gave out $8.1 billion to different state agencies in order to combat and prevent coronavirus in the United States. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore, and we're having to fight the virus on our soil. So what the House has done is they've actually moved another bill into law, and that is what we're going to talk about in pretty good detail here, and that is HR 6201, and that is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And this act can really be split into 2 different sections. One is how we're going to provide care to those families that have children at home, and then the second section of this bill is really about paid sick leave. And I know that it's of huge interest to a lot of people, and they've probably heard a lot about this, but we're really going to look at firsthand what it says. And first of all, you need to know that this bill has actually been passed and enacted as a law. So everything that we say here, everything that I say here, has been passed through both the House, Senate, and signed by the President into law. And it will be in full effect in about 15 days. So get ready for that. So the first part of this bill gives the Secretary of Agriculture $1 billion worth of appropriations to give to states. And what the states have to do is provide a plan on how they're going to provide food for households with children that are staying home from school. And those households that qualify are only households with children that are staying home from school for more than 5 days. So that's an important thing to note. And what the state has to do is submit this plan and say that this is how we're going to do things, and the plan has to be equal to or greater than 5 days of free meals as it relates to the Food Stamp Act. So it'll be the equivalent or greater of getting food stamps for 5 days. The next section of the bill, and the larger portion of the bill that I'm going to talk about, is the paid sick leave portion. And first we're going to talk about the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act. What that is exactly that. It's an expansion upon what already is in place. And what they have said is that in a public state of emergency or public health emergency between now and December 31st, so that relates to the COVID-19, or say some other public health emergency breaks out for some reason, that there are certain rules that will go into effect for paid and unpaid sick leave. And first of all, it says that the first 10 working days are unpaid sick days. Now you can cover those unpaid sick days with either vacation or sick leave time, but the first 10 days are unpaid. Any time after that, you are entitled to $200 a day, up to but not to exceed $10,000 as far as like your normal paid sick leave. Moving on to Division E, or the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. Now this section or division, it has only to do with COVID-19. It doesn't have to do with any public health emergency that I had talked about in the last one. So the rules are a little bit different. There's no unpaid sick leave here. If you have any of the following bullet points, either your employer or the federal government or local government has told you to quarantine, you have symptoms or are seeking diagnosis of COVID-19, or a healthcare official has told you to stay home, or you're even staying home taking care of someone who not necessarily has COVID-19, but are doing it in precautions of, so that's children who are staying home from school. If you're staying home to care for them, then you are also entitled to some of these benefits. And those benefits are 80 hours of paid sick leave. And that's 80 hours of paid sick leave for two different dollar amounts. The first dollar amount has to do with those people who are either quarantining because their local government told them to, local or federal government told them to, a doctor has told them to stay home, or they are seeking diagnosis and have symptoms of COVID-19. For those people, they're entitled to $511 per day for the 10 working days that you're allowed to have, or the 80 hours, up to not to exceed $5,110. For those people who are just staying home and taking care of someone that are either a precaution to spreading COVID-19 or are taking care of someone who actually has COVID-19, those people are only entitled for $200 a day or $2,000 total. There are some employers that get some special rules, like healthcare providers and those that are emergency responders, where they can submit a waiver to where they don't have to adhere to this 80-hour sick leave rule. And yes, they do deserve it, and I'm sure that if those people talk with their employer, that they wouldn't get dragged into work if they were sick, especially if you're in the healthcare industry and you know how contagious this thing can be and that we're trying to contain it. But those rules are in effect, and those things can be done by those employers if they want to bring all of their employees in no matter what. So there is something that I didn't talk about at the beginning of this video, and that is Division F. And this division and section is about providing free tests to those that need them. So if you have symptoms, if you think you have a cough or a fever, go out and get tested, because under this division you are completely covered and all of the expenses should be taken care of. And if someone says, well, it's not, and you need to pay us some money, tell them to come watch this video, tell them to go to Division F of HR 6021, and you can see where no health insurance can charge me for my coronavirus test. The last thing I want to say is thank you for watching the videos. I know pretty much everybody who's watching personally, and it means a lot to me that you're out there sharing videos and that you're still watching and that you're with me. And I thank you for the support, and I thank you for the feedback. I'm always open to it. Call, text, YouTube comment, shoot at me at Twitter or something. But always remember to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Also, I just want to say, for the bottom of my heart, just because I know everybody out there watching these videos, that the time that we're in right now with this coronavirus, I want everybody to stay as safe as possible. So please don't take any unnecessary risk. Please stay home. Please stay away from sick people. I know it's kind of goes without saying, but thanks again, and I hope everybody stays safe. Really, really I do, and I hope to see you guys soon.